So it's really great to be here, finally. I wasn't here last year, so I really enjoyed this year, the conference, and it's really great to open it, like first time in my life I'm opening the conference. So yeah. And who am I? I'm Jarek Ratajski, and basically I'm a software engineer working for a company called Digital Asset. Like, it's really easy to find on Google. But basically I code in Haskell and Scala, and we do a solution for smart contracts, a language for smart contracts. But basically, it's not about company what I will be talking about. This talk is basically about me, to some extent. Who am I, what I think, and I will be talking a lot about agile. And some of these things might be controversial for some people, but those are just my opinions, and I'm even aware that if you ask the same questions that I will be stating some of my former colleagues, they will have a different opinions on the same things, especially if they were Scrum Masters. Okay, so let's start. Who knows what is this about, the picture? Yeah, if you attend multiple conferences, you hear it like at least once a year. There was a infamous, actually, experiment about monkeys. So basically, scientists put some monkeys into the room, put the bananas on top, just below the ceiling, and put a ladder. And the idea was that anytime a monkey was climbing up the ladder to just get a banana, there was a automatically cold shower raining all over the room. So not a pleasant experience. So quickly, monkeys learned, you just don't get bananas. Okay, what the scientists did, they basically one day took one of those monkeys out and introduced a new monkey to the room. And you know what has happened? The new monkey looked, oh, there's a banana. I don't see it here, but there was in this room. And started to climb the ladder, but other monkeys basically catch it and decided, no, you don't go it. Explain it in probably violent way. So the new monkey learned, you don't go for the banana for reasons. And so you can imagine what happened next. Slowly they were like exchanging the monkeys in the room to the moment where all the monkeys in the room never actually experienced the cold shower. Still they knew and were teaching new monkeys that you don't even touch the ladder. So I was hearing this story multiple times, and one day I tried to find out who was that cruel scientist. Where did it happen? And it seems that this is basically a legend. I didn't do a thorough search, so I might be wrong, but it seems, and some people claim you can find it on Google, that never such experiment was held. There were similar experiments held that even prove that monkeys are not that stupid. Okay, however, there is a thing. You know, we are humans, not monkeys. And maybe we are not that smart. And that talk is about questions about bananas, ladder, and my questions that I state and answers I see. So let's start with estimates. Yeah, so estimates, I'm talking about estimating tasks. And there is this comic I've seen probably on LinkedIn, doesn't matter, but here someone is making fun that few developers were asked about estimating a task, and yeah, all of them gave different random numbers. And it must be then stupid, obviously. So are random estimates stupid? What do you think about it? Why are estimates random? So let's go back to the point, what is an estimation? So technically there is an estimation that actually predates IT, and it's basically a process where we just give a value. It doesn't have to be a time the task is complete. We can estimate, for instance, how high the tree is or something like that. But the point of estimation is just we try to give somehow meaningful value using data that's basically not sure. It's unstable. Because maybe when we are estimating the software task, we are assuming that this code is mostly okay, so this task should go okay, but the other module, maybe it's a completely mess, so we estimate that this task should take a little bit longer. But obviously, at any moment, we don't really see the full code, the full context. So we are guessing. So we are basing on some we are making estimation based on some unstable, uncertain data. And in mathematics, there is something which is called estimator. And the name, there is something, let's say, completely different, but the name is not really accidentally the same as and similar to estimation. The mathematicians call it estimator. And what is estimator? It's a statistic. What is a statistic? Statistic is a function of data, but of the data that is random. And so when we are, you can think of it, when we are estimating, we are trying to give a value based on some uncertain data. And actually, and we have some probably complex calculations in mind. We become, in this moment, estimator, because basically we provide a value given some data that we know, but this data might actually be different. And this is the moment where estimator somehow matches to the estimation process. And funny thing about estimator, it is random variable. Let's say by definition you can quickly prove it because it's based on random variables and itself. And when we are based on some assumptions in the code, on uncertain data, it's actually the same. This is, from a mathematical perspective, it's not true random, but it's actually random, let's say, in a sensible meaning. Because we don't really know, for instance, is this code really a mess? Is there no surprise in this model, something like that? So, simple answer to this is, estimations, by definition, by design, always yield random numbers. So if someone is surprised why different people give different answers, that shouldn't be a surprise. If you get someone estimated task for 1 week and it took 3 weeks, no surprise, because that was based on a random number. Okay, so that's simple, yeah? But the point is that somehow that happens. So I estimated, and I knew this was my best effort to provide meaningful value, but reality is different. And then I get frustrated. So it's the same as I throw a dice, and I'm guessing, oh, that will be 3. Oh, it was 4. And now I'm set for a full day, because I'm so bad at predicting. Okay, think of it for a moment, yeah? Agile developers. Okay, so, but people still tend to demand, to fight for perfect estimates. And there is a way for that, yeah? Very simple. You know it. Basically, but the truth is, there is also gray area. The longer you spend on estimation, the longer you analyze tasks, the better the value will be. Less random, less variance, let's say, in a mathematical way. But if the task takes 6 days, does it make sense to spend 3 days on predicting it? Probably not. So you spend 10 minutes, and then obviously the answer is more random. And don't be sad if it doesn't match the reality. Reality is wrong. Okay, so the question is, the other question comes. People from time to time tell me, but I was asking, someone to do decorating my bathroom, how long does it take? And basically they predict it well, mostly. Why we are so bad in IT, yeah, about it? Are we that bad? Why it works, for instance, for construction industry? But yeah, we are bad. Do you think we are really bad in estimations in IT? Mostly people agree about it. But let's say, building is a little bit different. So I was building a house in the past, so I saw that the tools, materials are mostly stable. People have experience with them, and sometimes for years they were building the same houses, they were doing the same bathrooms, etc. And you can say, in IT we have the same. So there was the developer 5 years of experience in Angular. Obviously, in other projects, he will be faster and he will predict well. Actually not, because we have one rule that we mostly follow. We don't repeat. What does it mean? That this project in Angular, the developer was doing in one project, doesn't necessarily map easily his knowledge and experience to other projects, because on top of Angular, what he had? Multiple functions, multiple project-specific extensions, let's say. And it means that you can't easily, projects basically do not repeat as well as in building. and constructions. So whenever we introduce a new function to the code because we see something repeats, what we do, we actually change the materials we work on. So it mean, what does it mean? That we are actually changing the material, that we are making things possibly faster in the future, but we are also making things way more unstable. On some extent, that's beautiful in IT, because if I introduce more functions, I would probably be faster and more. For instance, if I change mind what the functions should do, because, I don't know, customer changes his idea how we build software, probably there is one place I can change stuff and things will be different. If I start building a wall from, I don't know, bricks, and in one moment, after 100 meters, customer decides, oh, actually, I wanted, I don't know, metal fence. That would be a disaster. But in IT, thanks to our changing and introducing of functions, basically reusable parts, we are way more flexible. So we don't typically end, if you build a house, you don't end typically with that, because people know we don't change stuff that often. If you started from this material, you probably continue, because otherwise this will be a disaster, as in the picture. But in IT, we accept that we are changing stuff even while we are still building. And this is beautiful, but at a cost. We are way less stable. It's harder to predict, because all the time we just change the tools we are building with. And look at this project. I love this particular one. So now, 2006, of the deadline announced, 2011. Okay, great. And a little bit like a year before that, someone realized, oh, we want to be ready on the October 2011. Let's postpone the deadline a couple of months, so it'll be June 2012. Great. So May 2012, just a month before the deadline, someone realizes, oh, we need 1 more month. Okay, such things happen, yeah? Who was in such project? Okay, sometimes that happens. And you see how this goes. Like, next year, people realize we'll need another year, till the 2017, when someone finally realized, okay, it's gonna take a couple more years. And I can only tell you this project actually ended successfully, let's say. This was Berlin-Brandenburg Airport. You know, it's like, interesting about this project is that wasn't the first airport that human civilization built. Wasn't even the first in Germany. Wasn't even the first in Berlin. But somehow, you know, it looked like that. So, yeah, my answer to, whenever you see this, like, I really love this from Twitter, like, making fun of software engineer and estimation skills. We are not that bad. We have really complex matter, and we are still doing, and we are not that bad. Okay. Next point is, next question I state. And that's a really tough question. Why do we even estimate? So, does your project need estimates? So, now, exercise for you. Think, when did you last time estimate a task? A task, I mean something, you know, for you or maybe a small team. And you gave some number. What would happen if in practice the time took like 3 times as much as you predicted? Would the project be closed? Would the company go bankrupt? Would everything change in a plan you will have to completely rewrite how you are going to deliver? And I don't really see you, but typically when I ask this question, like out of 100 people, I see 1 hand raised when someone says, oh, actually, there will be a disaster in my project for some reason. But mostly, nothing happens. And most of the time, that's at least my experience, nothing happens. Those estimates are basically not really useful. Nothing happens if there are 1, 10, or 12. And when do we actually need to estimate? I was doing that. A few times I was doing fixed price project. Customer comes to the company, gives this whole huge documentation requirements, and you have to say the number because you signed the contract. Then it's needed. Typically nowadays we don't do such projects, but quite often customer asks, oh, I want this module to existing project, and just tell me it's $1 million or $100,000. And then that makes sense to estimate that. But the point is that most of the time we make ourselves frustrated by giving incorrect numbers is by doing this, by doing planning poker. We give these numbers, and which I say are mostly meaningless and doesn't really matter. It's 3 or 5, but we are arguing, and that thing happened to me. I was once at the meeting, 8 people discussing and arguing passionately if something takes, that was in story points, but at the end of the day, it was between 1 or 2 days. And half of hours spent on that. If someone already started this task, it would be probably quite far ahead. But this happens. So why? And now my personal story, which really changed my mind many years ago, that was 2012, I think, I'm not sure. So I was working for a project where all the developers were in Poland, and basically product owner, analysts were in other countries, doesn't matter at the moment. And we are having like every 2 weeks this planning meeting, extremely boring, where analysts were answering the questions, product owner was presenting stories, and we are supposed to estimate them. And I remember that during this meeting, there was only one thing I dreamed about. I want to code. So I was having the laptop. I was pretending that I just checking what's about the stories that are just presented. Actually, I was just, running tests, doing stuff, and I was even committing to Git. And only pretending that I listen. And I was thinking, I am just that bad because I like technology. I hate business value. And and then something interesting happened. Because a few weeks later, I was at the on-site with analysts and product owner. And through the camera, that was a conferencing setup you know from the past, I was able to just see my team of developers answering all these questions about estimates, etc. And I just saw, oh my God, it's me. It's me 5 times. 5 suffering persons trying to code secretly while pretending they are listening to stories. And it was extremely well visible on camera. And then I realized I'm not alone. I'm so relieved. Okay. And developers are like that because engineers like that. If you know the thing you are doing is just worthless, because those numbers do not matter. We were still supposed to do this, soft. No matter if someone gives 5 or 10, the only meaningful thing for us was just a priority, what we do according to architecture, no according to if it's 3 or 5. I will go back to that later. So we knew this is useless. So we're suffering. So basically, even if you do estimates, maybe you don't have to argue about 3 or 5. And maybe you just don't need them at all, quite often. But there is one result. Why do we want these numbers? Have you ever played Scrum Tetris or seen someone playing Scrum Tetris? So Scrum Tetris is this moment when Scrum Master, for instance, sees that, oh, we have 4 story points left in this sprint. And now it would be maybe quite sensible to put this 5 story point worth story, but if we don't do this, the velocity will go down. So let's put 2 other story points that are both worth 2 points, so this makes perfect, Tetris, a match. And the velocity will not go down, and everyone will be happy. And why do you care about velocity? Because what happens if velocity goes down? What disaster? Technically, nothing happens. It's just, internal thing. But someone from above is watching. And if it goes down, someone from management will come and ask, do you need help? And as all the developers know, you never need help. You never need help. Scrum Master knows this. We don't need help for sure, and knows that then he should play perfect Tetris to keep this velocity up. Okay. So, but what is this velocity anyhow? That's interesting. What is this velocity? Yeah, technically, how many story points we do in a sprint? Yeah, that's obvious. But think for a moment, what does it mean? Because I love it. I've seen it in multiple companies. How meaningful the value is. Because what is a story point? Okay, that's a really tough question. And by the way, I have absolutely no certificates, nothing. I have no idea about Scrum. I was doing that for 20 years, but I have no idea because I'm just software engineer and I care about the code. And by the way, you can ask questions, tough questions on Slido, if you see that I am terribly wrong on some aspect. But basically, my engineer point of view is that story points at the end of the day are just time. You can cheat that it's something different, the complexity relates in relation to other stories, but it's about how long takes something. So you can mostly relate it to time. And at the end, you will get something like velocity is time, because story points in time, by time, because a sprint is a time, week or 2 week. What is that, yeah? Okay. If you just cut it, you will get something without units, and that's not wrong. In physics and mathematics, we have this. This is a coefficient. But what this coefficient describes? And there is a good answer what it describes. It describes how many minutes are in hour. And there is a short answer to that, approximately 60. That's the answer to velocity. However, also, that's the very tough part of this presentation. In practice, I found out that it's mostly 20 minutes for reasons. I don't go deeper on that. But But what are the solutions? So I'm mostly blaming things, but there are some solutions. And really, people are trying. No estimates at all, because it doesn't matter. So yeah, people do that in Kanban, for instance, quite often. But basically, maybe you don't need estimates. Maybe you don't need to suffer that you gave the wrong answers. In my company, we most often do this, 1, 2, 3. And actually means trivial, boring, risky. So one is trivial task. It's a couple of lines. We know what to do. Nothing, no risk is expected. Boring is basically, someone has to spend some time on that, but we know what to do. So it's not trivial, it's some writing, but there is no risk. Risky means there's like new library to try, something we haven't done before, and relatively some code to write. And for instance, it doesn't mean that a task with a 3, risky, takes 3 times as much as 1. Absolutely nothing like that. And we don't do this for estimation of time. We say these numbers only for one thing. Because when we see the story, developer asked, what do you think about this story? Is it trivial, boring, risky? Because if one person gives 1, one person gives 2, one person gives 3, it's interesting. And we don't put 2 because that's medium. No, we ask why someone thinks this is trivial and someone thinks it's actually complex, risky stuff. And there is a then point for the discussion because maybe the story isn't clear or we have some information about the system, etc. So now completely different topic. Because you know what happens when you fight for velocity and all that stuff. Typically, quality suffers. And then we are blaming the management. Yeah, and basically, the answer of developers, we don't have time for quality. Not in every project, but quite often I've heard that. I was in those projects. And you know what? I found out this is a lie. Not always, but quite often. And sorry, here I'm blaming you, developers. You are saying things in a way that it will justify you doing bad job. How? Just listen to this. Answer to the story. I can do it in 3 days. But yeah, I will need 6 days totally if you expect a good quality. Like you go to the, with your car to be repaired, and the car mechanic says, yeah, it takes 3 days. If you want brakes working, yeah, it will be a little bit longer. Yeah. So there is a point. But you know what? Developers love to present it this way because they know the management will hear only one number, 3. They will hear it's 3, and if you give more time, the other 3 days will be spent on Counter-Strike or something else. However, you can say it this way. This should be done in 6 days. But okay, yeah, I know we have a deadline, release something, so 3 days, and we can put something on production, we'll pay the price later. It's completely different message. But we somehow assume business wants quick and dirty stuff, which is mostly not true. Is there is a production running, you can actually, and I was actually doing that during the meetings. I was asking product owner, do we really need this story made quick and dirty? And almost always the answer was absolutely no. We have running production and it must be stable. We don't want multiple bugs after release and stuff like that. So quite often no. But obviously there are moments you are doing startup, you are doing something before Black Friday, etc., where this changes. That's responsibility of developer and first product owner to communicate that, and then developer to understand the context. You are fighting for time, for quality, for scope. And then, so the answer is basically depends about the quality, but yeah, basically that's what I see. You can put blame on management if you just use smart wording. And then you are justified. The next question is really, I'm not really running in marathon, but if I would run in a marathon one day, I know how to do that. I have 20 years of experience. You'll basically do it in sprints. Run 100 meters as fast as possible. I was doing that. And then you repeat, because it works in IT, it must work in marathons. Basically, yeah, obviously, because we learned that to do a long project, we just do sprint where we do as fast as possible. Each one to keep velocity high, to not be asked that if you need a help. And yeah, it works, obviously. And then we have this ideal sprint, how it looks like. I've seen this, I've been to these projects, like first day of sprint, some planning, retro, and basically being exhausted after previous sprint. Then second, third day, you patch the bugs from the previous iteration, because now it's the time. Then in the middle of the sprint, you actually start the stories and realize you just were planning them, but they are not really ready. There are multiple unknown points, unclear. Then comes next week, and we know what happens, production bugs. So you are back to bugs, to logs, whatever. Then you find them, and then 8th day, it's almost over, you get answers from product owners about the stories, you are ready to do them, you code it, but it's like Scrum Master comes and says, you have to present this story and demo because otherwise velocity will go down and we will be asked if we need any help. So everyone agrees, let's forget about tests, let's forget about reviews, we'll patch that in the next sprint and, so that we just can present something on the demo. That's a really great way of doing stuff. And, then you have this picture. Who has seen this picture? What is that? There's a perfect burn-down chart. But multiple times you've heard, if it's like that, then it's something going wrong. If it's like that, then you are in 90% of the team doing Scrum. So what is a burn-down chart anyhow? That's a question. So I found the definition. Actually, you can actually read some of those books about agile, whatever. And I'm not sure where I got this definition from, but it says it's internal tool visualization that team uses to predict delivery of sprint backlog. And when I read that, actually after many years of looking at burnout charts, I was just thinking, it's interesting because I'm working typically in a small team when we have daily short sprints, and I don't really need a chart to know where we are in this sprint. Obviously, we are in trouble. That's a short answer. But basically, why would I need a chart? Because, it was really a project and we are looking at a burn-down chart of something 6 months old, with like 6 months long, with a bigger team. Yeah, that makes sense. But for a sprint, come on. So basically, the true answer that burn-down chart, the only sole reason for its existing is just to make you sad. So, you don't, I don't know. Maybe it's important to not get a satisfaction when you are working. And now comes I'm coming to the final question, questions. It's not all maybe a big distraction? Because, this whole agile movement was expected to make our work more focused on business value, what customer needs. And now we fight for velocity, yeah? And we fight for estimates, yeah? And we fight for, I don't know, nice charts also. That happens. Like let's make a small correction so that burned out child will look better. And we fight which team does better Scrum by the book and things like that. So yeah, what about those things? Like, actually, knowledge management. I love this point because I've seen that in a bigger company. There were like multiple Scrum teams. And one day, my team needed to do something in the security layer, where we knew the other team has a guy that could come to us and for one day and basically tell us how to do this stuff so that we know, okay, maybe 2 days, and the problem will be solved. Do that for us, and we'll learn how to do that. But our Scrum Master asked the other Scrum Master, and he said, no, we can't give you this guy because the velocity will go down. And so then from the team perspective, he was right. From the company perspective, it took us weeks to actually get to the point when we understood what to do in this layer. And actually, while doing that, we were asking multiple questions, this one specialist, so I bet it actually took longer. But okay. So some things are gone, are not in the focus anymore, for reasons. And so I'm not the only one that's seen this problem, and obviously, there are people even that sign Agile Manifesto and have blog posts, have talks about it, that something went wrong. Why? First thing, whenever I'm criticizing among colleagues, is that they ask, so you want to do waterfall, obviously. Who wants to do waterfall? Raise your hands. Oh, there are some people, brave you. So I can confess to one thing. I was coding already in 1990 something, not before. And with a team. From today's perspective, the projects were small, but back then we thought they were huge, actually, in C++, by the way. And funny thing is we were not doing any waterfall. We had absolutely even no idea. We never thought it should be done in a waterfall. And a couple of years ago, I remember when Paul Schultz, my colleague, was presenting that actually it was discovered where the waterfall first was presented in a paper by Winston Rice in 1970. And funny thing, there was this picture that then was copied multiple times. But below this picture, there was a huge paragraph which mostly means this doesn't work. They knew it in 1970. Surprise, yeah? And I remember, because when I was studying and I was doing first projects, we were thinking that we are doing a spiral model, iterational model, basically, which means we had increments. So we are planning increment, which we were not calling this stories, use cases we cover in this iteration. And then we were doing iteration, and then we were deploying that, testing on production, depends. That were different times. But, I was in that company doing that model, and one day, what happened? Come a smart guy telling us about agile, that we should be agile. And they looked at our process. They told us that we don't have iterations anymore. That's our sprints. And basically we don't have use cases, but just stories and few things like that. And we have this daily meeting on top of that. And we are agile, magically. No effort at all. And management got other KPIs. Now they had velocity. That's perfect. Everyone was happy, and that's how many companies became agile in a moment, like blink of an eye. So basically, my thinking about waterfall, because obviously there were people trying to do waterfall. There are those crazy projects done by government or some big companies that were trying, maybe this that shouldn't work will magically work. Yeah, but mostly it just existed as a public enemy. Like in Soviet propaganda, kulak. Something that barely exists, but is a good enemy. So whoever doesn't agree with us is a kulak. So whoever doesn't agree with agile must be supporter of waterfall. Great. So are there alternatives to what we do? Who has heard about it? Yeah, so who is doing that? Who was doing that? Oh, I see a couple of hands. So interesting, because back at the end of 90s, that was a thing, extreme programming, but it was very controversial, mostly because of pair programming. But we actually inherited tons of the things that from extreme programming, automatic tests, continuous integration, user stories. That's the things that I think became mainstream mostly after extreme programming first started with that. I might be wrong at this point, but that's how I was aware about that stuff. So the point about the extreme programming, I don't think it ever got mainstream anywhere. It was just always a niche thing, because, they don't, as far as I know, they don't have certificates. They don't have specific roles that someone can, full day be a, I don't know, extreme programming guard, or I don't know, no Jira plugins, and no fancy KPIs, as far as I know, and there's no money in that. So that's how we ignored it. Great. But now I'm coming to the end of this talk. There is really set clock, and there is a reason for that. Because, we are constantly, I hope some of you don't try to do Agile Scrum by the book. You are actually doing a wise thing, experimenting. I love experimenting, because how do you know your process is efficient? Because you try something different. You change it, you try. Maybe, sprint shouldn't take 2 weeks, but 1 week, maybe 1 day. I actually tried 1 day. This was awesome experience. And do that stuff to check, and maybe think of something else. So I was experimenting with Kanban, all the stuff. And I have some basically experiences what works best, was better, what works worse. But all these methodologies, even the waterfall, they care about one precious resource. What is the most valuable resource in our industry? Developer time. Yeah, you are resources. Come on, you know this. You are resources. Your time is a resource. So all these methodologies more or less try to optimize the time developers spend on doing stuff, so that they do the most useful things in the given time, in the least amount of time, etc. The point is that when I look at my day, and there are those days when you have in the middle of the day 2 hours meeting. 2 hours, and I work mostly 8 hours a day. And then comes the end of the day, I'm just thinking, what did I do today? What did I achieve? And I look at my changes in the Git, and I see barely anything. Just few lines of code. What was I doing the whole day? Surely I wasn't really whole day on this meeting, because it was only 25% of the time. The point is that there are those meetings and other things you do that maybe only take a fraction of time, but they take almost the full energy out of you. And then you have these days, I didn't do anything, and then you have to write a long story or confess the next day. And actually, you've seen that the less you do during the day, the more you can tell the next day during the daily stand-up. It's interesting. So there is the point that, and I've seen actually this year, first time that this block, although the thing is like discussed for a little more time, maybe the critical resource is not actually the time. Maybe we have something like energy. Yeah, so, and the problem with energy, how do you measure it? What KPI you put, yeah? What methodology uses energy in the most efficient way? I don't know. It's like maybe, yeah, it's something that should happen, because time is great for machines. If ChatGPT was doing all your job, which will probably happen, then this time or your GPU usage, CPU usage would make sense. Then Scrum will work perfectly with ChatGPT, I bet. The point, we are not robots, and as long as we are human devices working, probably time is not the best thing. So, but I don't have answer for you. That's exercise for you. Try to find this methodology that uses energy in an efficient way. And that's it. Thank you. So you can still ask some questions, but there are already some questions. Okay, so first question. Maybe I will just move it that way. Do you consider story point meaningless? If so, please. Okay, I'd say it depends, but I guess in majority of projects, they are obviously meaningless. Any points, any estimates, but story points even worse than actual days or man days, or good old man days, because at the end of the day, it's just indirectly and in a complex way saying the same. Yeah, so let's be direct. If you do estimations, save yourself this stupid step. Okay. Aren't burn charts ignored by developers? Okay, yeah, I ignore because I want to feel good, and great that most of the people probably, but I've seen unhappy developers because we are doing this exactly wrong burn chart as on the example. We should do differently. No, you are exactly doing this as it's supposed to be because that's how typical project works. And if it works, typical project works like that, there is nothing to be said about. Maybe you are not wrong, maybe there is something wrong with this methodology. Maybe the methodology is not totally wrong, but it doesn't fit your project, simply. Okay. Any more questions? Okay, I finished really early, great. Okay. Sorry? Okay, I can make a PDF. So where this presentation, I will basically make a PDF of that and put on some page with presentation and put with a GeeCON hash on Twitter. So that's typically how I do it. And there definitely should be a recording of that, yeah? After the GeeCON. So one day there will be a presentation of video. And actually, this presentation was already given in some other conferences. Maybe that it's already a little bit different version is available. Okay, let's assume that Scrum Masters help the team. So to prove their need to exist, they have to show some numbers. So they invent velocity. Yeah, that's okay. I don't know. I agree with that. Basically, I see it the difference. So basically, management always wanted something that was basically a KPI. How you progress. They were doing this stuff for ages this way. So they always need some numbers. And they found out, oh, we love this Scrum because it gives us a KPI. Velocity, great, let's use it. And that's how I think it became so important. Okay, hope this answered the question. So how can you explain this to product manager always from a perspective of the developer? Maybe put a video. So basically, okay, one thing. As a developer, I like to ask young basically juniors what they think. And quite often they say something which I can translate, the king is naked. Mostly it's about technologies, we use frameworks. They see, oh, you know, I understand this Java something, but you know, in Python that would be 2 lines. But sometimes it's about this. They just say, okay, we are just spending a lot of this time on this meeting. But the problem with a junior is like, not like in the original story, they cannot, you know, raise hands and say, this makes no sense at all. So I took this responsibility for basically with juniors and new monkeys in the room join. And they state this question, why don't we fetch the banana? They basically, I took the responsibility to actually take it seriously. Think of, maybe they are right, because they are fresh, because we are already, you know, we're doing things for ages that we forgot the original reason. Maybe there is no more cold shower on top of that because it's gone. Okay. When you use no estimations, what do you tell higher management on how long the entire... Oh, that's a great point, because I will actually address this. Telling management how long the entire project will take is a different thing. And typically, you don't really, sorry, I've seen that. You don't really take all the team and go through 100 or, I don't know, 200 stories and estimate with that with a planning poker. If you do, that's extremely frustrating. Mostly you take really experienced people that can know the business, know the technology, and they give some numbers, and then they estimate, like experts. We are doing that for ages. And I would say probably it makes more sense than really ask the whole team, where I can guarantee you most of the developers do not care. Okay, they maybe care, but they are just, yeah, they have no chance to even get into these stories and have some idea. So basically, that's not how we do that. estimation of the whole project, budgeting, feasibility study, that's one thing. Estimations of what I refer to, no estimations, it's you have a contract with a customer, we do it week by week, we present demos, so customer one knows the progress, and there makes no sense to estimate every story, because it doesn't change anything. Okay, hope this answer, but well, we can talk about it also later. What? Oh, I have no idea. Prompts should we use on ChatGPT to be better at estimates? No idea, but that's a great, maybe this part of our frustration can be taken. Do you have any ideas for a system which could, oh, sorry. Okay, I'm going to the second question, which could allow to manage developer energy. No, that's for you, sorry. You are young and eager to change the world. I am too old for that, so hopefully you will find something. So it's ready, so the answer when shipped, it's ready when it's ready. Again, we are coming back to this. So estimating a big project, module or something is one thing, and yeah, there are ways for that. And by the way, there are like even complex methodologies like function points, cosmic things, something that are for that. Whole team going through the whole specification of a system, it's not typically that's what you do. Scrum, okay. Okay, great. Someone is here an expert, which I am not. Scrum guy doesn't mention velocity or estimates at all. Don't blame it on Scrum. Blame it on people little. Yeah, could be. I'm exactly saying what typical Jarek as me, being a software engineer, experiences in projects we are basically telling we are Scrum compatible. I don't know, I've seen companies using XP, and they are saying mostly the biggest part of XP is actually the thing we don't like typically per programming, because that's how they basically share knowledge. And that was, for instance, in insurances, in a complex area of insurances, I know the company that uses that, mostly because that's efficient way of sharing a business knowledge. But I don't know. I haven't convinced any company to XP. I didn't even try. Do you still make estimations? So I told you, for instance, in my current team, when I was joining the current company, I told them what I think about Scrum and all that stuff, and I told that I don't want to do this, and they told me, we don't do this. These estimations we basically do, in some projects we do this 1 to 3, which is not for time, but for, again, are we on the same page with other people? My understanding, yeah? Okay, priorities, tasks. That's a perfect question. And my answer is that's exactly product owner job, mostly product owner. And when I was doing as a developer, as an engineer, that's the only thing I need from my product owner. Tell me the priorities. I don't care about sprints. This is a marathon. This takes months. I don't care if it's this week or that week, but tell me what's more important. What's for the customer, then maybe I consulted with a team what's most important from architecture point of view, but I don't care about sprints at all. Yeah, and that's the job of a product owner mostly. Next question. Don't you think, we have 2 minutes, don't you think at some point developers get lost and Scrum could be helpful in that way? Okay, yes. So I actually think in some companies Scrum helps, basically in companies where there are really serious problems in communication between people. And that's I would say, is cultural thing. For instance, my experience with Polish team is that we talk all the time. When we are in the room, even not in the same room, we talk about all the stupid things, but also accidentally about projects sometimes. And that's how we communicate. But if there is I've been in these countries, 10 developers in a big room, and not a single one during the day. Okay, there was a word. Do we go for lunch now? Yes. Actually, yeah, gehen. Okay, but not a single word. And in that culture, Scrum might help, because you have daily stand-ups, so one confession, at least something, yeah. How do you predict delays without estimates? If there are no estimates, there are no delays. Sorry. Hi, man, and God bless you. What do you think about every morning calls for daily? Okay. I say depends. I actually tried basically chat, not chat GPT, but just Slack for daisies. I like it because it stays, but I like occasional talks. So we do dailies where we, half of the time, basically when I'm working in a remote team, half of the times during the dailies, we just talk about, life, meaning of life and style life, stuff like that. It helps. Okay, so depends. What's your experience regarding estimates by calculating the probability of completing antics? Oh, sorry. Can we take off stage? I will take, some pen and paper. We'll calculate. Oh, sorry. I'm mathematician, but I'm too old and I need a paper. Okay, thank you.